There is a moment before every great mistake in love, quiet, tender, full of hope, when a woman feels the pull and tells herself, this time it's different. His words feel fated, his eyes almost familiar, and the air around him seems charged with meaning. You do not know why, but you feel chosen, and in that instant, your soul begins to dream. But hear me clearly. The moment you feel that intoxicating pull, you are not meeting the man, you are meeting your own unconscious. The thrill is not his doing, it is your soul awakening through him. His presence stirs what has long slept inside you, your need to be seen, your hunger to be mirrored, the echo of a father's silence, the ache of an unlived destiny. And you call it love. It begins beautifully. You study the way he moves, the things he says, you imagine the life you might share. Yet somewhere beneath the warmth, there is a faint tension, a quiet tremor that warns. This love is powerful because it touches something unfinished. The deeper your longing, the closer you stand to your own shadow. Every woman must understand this before she gives her heart. Falling in love is not merely attraction, it is invocation. When the soul sees a chance to heal, it sends out a call, and someone answers. The one who arrives may not be the man who will stay, but the man who will show you yourself. He will awaken your light and expose your wounds. He will make you feel seen and then make you realize how much of yourself you've kept hidden. You believe he holds the key to your happiness, but in truth, he only turns the lock you placed on your own heart. His distance will test your patience. His moods will reveal your insecurity. His silence will resurrect every memory of being unseen. The self-God within uses him as mirror and catalyst. You were never meant to lose yourself in him, but to find yourself through him. Do not mistake this for cynicism. Love is sacred, but only when it is conscious. Most women fall in love unconsciously, hoping a man will heal what she refuses to face. That is why passion so easily turns to pain. What began as a miracle becomes a pattern. What began as connection becomes captivity. Before you give him your heart, ask yourself, what part of me seeks to be rescued? What fear hides beneath my desire? Because when a woman gives love from fear, she does not unite with a man, she merges with her wound. And that wound will drain her life until she remembers what she forgot. That love was never meant to be a transaction of need, but a meeting of wholeness. If you can love with open eyes, with awareness of your own shadow and of his, you will enter the sacred fire without being burned. Then love ceases to be possession and becomes transformation. You stop trying to keep him and begin learning from what he awakens. You stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Remember this before you fall. No man is ever the source of your worth. He is the mirror that shows whether you have found it. Love him if you must, but love yourself first, so that his presence is grace, not survival. Then, when real love arrives, it will not consume you. It will recognize you, and you will recognize it not as destiny, but as peace. To fall in love is not a choice, it is a descent. The soul does not ask permission before it stirs. One day, the world shifts. The familiar grows radiant, the ordinary seems touched by eternity. The heart trembles, not with logic, but with recognition, as if something ancient within you has been remembered. The moment you feel this awakening, you stand before an archetype as old as creation itself, the archetype of falling. It is not a social event, not mere attraction, but a psychic phenomenon. The ego, accustomed to control, is suddenly pulled into the depths of the unconscious, where forces older than reason move according to their own mysterious laws. When a woman says, "I have fallen in love," she does not yet understand what has happened. She believes she has chosen a man, yet it is the self that has chosen the form through which it will speak. The sensation of being chosen is not divine favor, it is projection. It is the soul recognizing itself in another form and calling it destiny. You see him and feel as though you have met before. His presence carries the fragrance of inevitability. This familiarity is not memory of the man, it is memory of the self. He is the mirror that reveals the forgotten life of your soul, the reflection through which your depths recognize themselves. Every powerful attraction is a psychic summons. It is not the man alone who pulls you, it is the force of your own unlived life trying to emerge. The psyche chooses those whose presence will awaken what has been dormant. What you call fate is the unconscious seeking consciousness, through the mask of romance. The man who feels fated often carries what you have not yet claimed. His confidence mirrors your hidden courage, his intelligence your own unspoken thought, his mystery the depth you have repressed. You are drawn to him because he embodies what your own soul is ready to become. This is why early love feels divine. For a moment, the unconscious unveils the image of the divine within you both. You look upon one another and see not two beings, but one light reflected twice. This radiance is not fantasy, it is revelation. The heart glimpses wholeness before it has learned to sustain it. And yet, this revelation cannot last. The gods withdraw, the image fades. The projection begins to crack under the weight of reality. The man becomes human again, imperfect, uncertain, opaque. What once shimmered with meaning becomes ordinary, and the woman grieves as though paradise has been lost. She does not know that the loss was necessary. The psyche creates the illusion to lead her into love, then destroys it so that she may learn to love consciously. Projection is not error but method. The soul paints its inner image upon another so that it may finally see what it carries within. The intoxication of love, then, is the veil before revelation. It is the soul's attempt to make the unseen visible. The man is not the content of this vision, he is its canvas. When the image dissolves, what remains is the opportunity to meet the real man or to meet the self behind the projection. But most cannot bear the disillusionment. They mourn the fading of enchantment, mistaking it for the death of love. In truth, it is love's birth. The initial glow was not the proof of connection, but the promise of transformation. What follows is not failure, but initiation into reality. To love consciously is to remain when the dream fades and to ask, who is he now? Who am I? Without my fantasy. Only then does relationship begin. Until that moment, one is in love not with another, but with an image created by the psyche's hunger for wholeness. This is the secret every soul must learn. The one who seems to awaken your divinity is not its source. You project the God image onto him because you have forgotten its home within yourself. As long as you believe he contains it, you will spend your life chasing your own light through his shadow. The psyche's need for wholeness is holy, but its first expression is naive. It sends the ego into love as one sends an apprentice into the temple blindfolded. You enter believing you seek another's heart. You emerge realizing you were seeking your own. The fall into love, therefore, is not downward but inward. The ego falls from its lonely height into the depths of the self, where opposites meet joy and sorrow, desire and fear, heaven and shadow. To fall is to surrender control, to yield to forces that understand you more deeply than you understand yourself. Every descent carries both danger and grace. To love without consciousness is to drown. To love with awareness is to descend and return, with treasure. The difference lies not in the man you meet, but in the awareness you bring. Consider this. The thrill of falling is also the thrill of dying. Something within you must dissolve for love to enter. The boundaries that once kept you safe begin to blur. You sense that you are being undone, that your identity trembles under the gaze of the beloved. This is why love terrifies, even as it enchants. It promises rebirth, but only through death of the familiar self. The ancients knew this. They told stories of lovers who descended into the underworld for one another, Orpheus for Eurydice, Inanna for Dumuzi, but they did not descend to rescue the other. They descended to discover the part of themselves that had been buried with the beloved. So too does every woman descend when she falls in love. She follows her image into darkness, seeking reunion with her lost self. This is why love begins with awe and ends with revelation. The man's face becomes the face of the unconscious. His eyes, the mirror through which the soul studies itself. He awakens what has slept for centuries. You do not fall for him, you fall for what he represents, the forgotten life within. But beware, what begins as awakening can quickly turn to possession. When you mistake projection for reality, the man becomes idol or addiction. You cling to him not for who he is, but for what he symbolizes. You demand from him what only your own soul can give: meaning, safety, completion. Such love becomes bondage. You will oscillate between worship and despair, believing you have found the divine and then been forsaken by it. The truth is simpler. You were never abandoned. You only confused the vessel for the source. The man was the messenger, not the message. When the projection fades, the woman faces a sacred choice. She may retreat into disillusionment, calling love deceitful and the heart foolish. Or she may awaken, realizing that the God she adored in him was her own unclaimed divinity reflected back. If she chooses awakening, she begins the work of integration. She learns to withdraw her projection, to reclaim the qualities she gave away. She discovers that the courage, strength, and wisdom she saw in him were her own, waiting for recognition. This is the real purpose of falling in love, to retrieve the scattered pieces of the soul. For every man who stirs you deeply, there is an inner image he corresponds to. You do not love blindly, you love archetypally. The outer form is merely the actor, the inner figure is the script. Each encounter reveals another facet of the self, some tender, some terrible, all essential. Therefore, love is not a random accident, it is the self's deliberate strategy for individuation. It places before you those who will awaken your dormant energies, who will challenge your illusions, who will force you to grow beyond comfort. Love is the self's most exquisite method of making you conscious. If you understand this, you will no longer chase the ecstasy of falling. You will respect its danger. You will recognize that the dizzying height of infatuation is the prelude to descent. You will enter love as one enters a temple with reverence and awareness that transformation awaits. When the first spark of love ignites, pause before surrendering to its flame. Ask not, who is he, but what in me has awakened? For in that question lies the beginning of wisdom. The man may or may not remain, but the part of you that stirred will never sleep again. Falling in love is not the end of loneliness, it is the revelation of how deeply you have been alone within yourself. It brings to light the distance between who you are and who you might yet become. The man's arrival is the symbol of reunion, but the reunion is inward. When you can see this, you are no longer at the mercy of the fall. You descend willingly, eyes open, heart steady. You understand that every love, no matter how brief or painful, carries a divine intention to lead you closer to your own soul. Thus, falling in love becomes initiation. It is the threshold where the personal meets the eternal, where the human discovers its own divinity through reflection in another. The man is the mirror, the fall is the seeing. And when you rise from that seeing, you will know love was never meant to complete you, it was meant to reveal you. The fall was not into him, but into yourself. Every descent of the heart is a return to the self, and every true love is the beginning of awakening. Every woman carries within her a hidden companion, an unseen man who lives in the chambers of her psyche. He is not flesh but presence, not lover but symbol. He is the animus, the inner masculine who shapes how she perceives the outer world, how she speaks, thinks, and dreams of love. From the first moment she feels drawn to a man, it is not only he who calls, it is this inner figure recognizing himself reflected in form. She may believe it is destiny, but it is dialogue, the unconscious speaking to itself through the face of another. The animus has many masks. In his earliest form, he is voice rather than presence, a whisper of conviction, an opinion that feels absolute. He is the inner authority that tells her what is true, what is possible, what she deserves. When undeveloped, he is harsh. When matured, he is guide. When unconscious, the animus appears outside as the man who fascinates, dominates, or eludes her. He is magnetic precisely because he embodies her unclaimed power. The more she disowns her authority, the more she invests it in him. The less she speaks her truth, the more his voice becomes divine. She does not yet see that what draws her is not the man himself, but her own lost qualities mirrored in him, his logic, his steadiness, his command of the world. These qualities, which might be hers, seem unreachable. She might become through him. This projection creates both ecstasy and torment. At first, she feels alive as never before. His attention seems like sunlight to a long-forgotten seed. She begins to bloom in his gaze, but soon she notices another feeling, a subtle dependence, a growing fear of his withdrawal. The animus in shadow does not liberate, he possesses. He tells her that love means surrender, that peace lies in obedience. He feeds her longing with illusion. If he chooses you, you will be complete. and so she chases her own divinity disguised as a man who cannot stay. She swings between worship and resentment. When he approaches, she feels whole. When he turns away, she collapses into emptiness. Her emotions become tides ruled by his moon. In truth, it is not he who commands her, it is the image she has placed upon him. The God she has forgotten lives within. Every projection is an attempt by the psyche to make the invisible visible. The unconscious must take form to be known. And so the inner man steps outward, wearing the faces of those she meets, forcing her to see what she carries within but has never dared to own. The gods of the psyche are patient teachers. The animus will send many messengers until she listens. Some will charm her, some will wound her, all will point toward the same truth. The qualities she adores or fears in them belong first to her. There comes a moment when she can no longer sustain the illusion. The man begins to fall from the pedestal. His flaws, once invisible, now glare in the light. His words, once sacred, sound ordinary. She feels betrayed, but it is the image, not the man, that betrays her. This disillusionment is the birth of consciousness. The psyche withdraws its projection like a tide receding from the shore. What remains is not romance, but revelation. The recognition that what she adored in him was her own potential, projected and then returned. This is the turning point. The woman stands between two choices: to mourn the loss of illusion or to reclaim what it concealed. If she chooses mourning, she will repeat the pattern with a new man. If she chooses reclamation, she begins the long work of integration. Integration begins with solitude. She must learn to hear the animus as inner voice rather than outer idol. She listens to her thoughts not as commandments but as dialogue. She asks, "Who speaks within me? Is this voice tyrant or teacher?" Thus she begins to transform domination into discernment. The animus matures when a woman begins to think for herself. Each time she trusts her own insight rather than begging for his, the inner masculine grows noble. Each time she speaks without apology, he sheds another mask of arrogance and reveals his true face clarity. At first, this clarity feels strange. She may mistake it for coldness. Yet it is not absence of feeling, but balance between feeling and thought. The mature animus no longer argues with the heart. He listens to it, protects it, gives form to its wisdom. Through him, she learns to hold her emotions like a sculptor holds clay, gently but firmly, shaping them without destroying their essence. The chaos of longing becomes the art of understanding. Her inner world gains structure without losing depth. The myth of Psyche and Eros illustrates this evolution perfectly. Psyche loved the invisible god who visited her in darkness. She was forbidden to look upon his face, but curiosity, symbol of awakening consciousness, drove her to light the lamp. The flame revealed his divinity but also burned her hand. So too does the woman awaken. When she dares to see the man clearly, the fantasy burns away. She suffers, for the god of her projection is gone. Yet in that moment, she begins to love not blindly but with sight. Her pain marks the transition from enchantment to awareness. Psyche's trials that followed, sorting seeds, fetching water, descending to the underworld, represent the work of integration. The feminine learns discernment, endurance, and independence. Only after these labors can she reunite with Eros as equal, not as worshipper. The same process unfolds within every woman. She must separate her love from her longing, her need from her nature. The man she once saw as divine becomes human, and she, having claimed her divinity, becomes whole. Yet even as she integrates, the animus continues to test her. He whispers in subtler ways now, through ideals of perfection, through dreams of destiny, through judgments disguised as truth. He tempts her to abandon her intuition in favor of certainty. But she has learned that true wisdom is born from their union, not from his rule. As her awareness deepens, she begins to sense his transformation. The once demanding voice softens. The inner man becomes companion rather than controller. He no longer dictates, he dialogues. He does not seek to dominate, but to balance the tides of feeling with reason's light. This inner harmony radiates outward. The men she meets now evoke different responses. She no longer needs to be dazzled or destroyed. Her attraction shifts from intensity to integrity. She looks for truth, not excitement, presence, not performance. A curious peace replaces the old fever. She may still be moved by beauty, but it no longer blinds her. Her heart opens not from desperation, but from recognition. She no longer sees men as answers, but as mirrors, each reflecting a different aspect of her own soul's unfolding. To reach this maturity is to reclaim authority over one's own life. The animus becomes her ally in the world, a source of courage, focus, and purpose. She begins to create rather than to crave, to speak rather than to seek permission. Her inner marriage has begun. Every love that once bewildered her now makes sense. Each man who appeared, stayed, or left played a role in shaping her awareness. She sees them as chapters of one great narrative, the soul's gradual awakening to its own wholeness. And so, she no longer condemns the past, she blesses it. For without projection, she could not have seen the image. Without illusion, she could not have reached truth. The men who wounded her were not destroyers, but mirrors of her inner distance from herself. To love consciously is to thank even the shadow for its service. The woman who has met her animus within no longer fears solitude, for she is never truly alone. The voice that once demanded now defends. The energy that once scattered now sustains. Such a woman does not give her heart to be completed, but to be expressed. Her love no longer says, "Fill me," but "Meet me." And the man who meets her in this new field will feel it, the weight of presence, the stillness of one who has united her opposites. For the man who once seemed godlike is no longer necessary. His task was to awaken the God within her. When that work is done, she loves differently, freely, clearly, without possession. Her devotion becomes transparent, her strength luminous. This is the mystery of the inner man. He appears outside until he is recognized within. Each love story is a dialogue between the soul and its reflection, a rehearsal for the ultimate union, the reconciliation of masculine and feminine within the self. When this inner marriage is complete, she no longer seeks approval in another's eyes. She becomes her own witness. The man who enters her life now does not awaken her worth, he meets it. He does not dominate her spirit, he walks beside it. Thus, the one she once adored as savior becomes symbol. He was never the destination, only the guide. Through him, she came to know herself. Through his silence, she learned to listen. Through his leaving, she discovered that love, once conscious, cannot be lost. And I say to you, do not despise the men who have stirred and vanished. They were emissaries of the self, bearing the image of your own divine counterpart. Thank them, release them, and return inward, for the one you sought through them now dwells within you, waiting to be known. Every love that begins in blindness ends in revelation. What you call chemistry is not always divine alignment. It is often the signal of an ancient wound awakening. Beneath the thrill of attraction lies the echo of something unresolved. Desire, when unconscious, is not freedom, it is fate. The soul is clever, it hides its pain behind beauty. It calls forth the one who will touch the hidden scar. You think you have found love, but the psyche has found its mirror. The man you long for may not be the one you are meant to keep, but the one you are meant to remember yourself through. Desire, in its first form, is innocent. It is the child reaching for warmth, believing that to be held is to be whole. But when that warmth was once denied, the child grows into a woman who confuses tension with passion. She mistakes the ache of absence for the fire of love. Thus begins the repetition. She is drawn again and again to men who reflect the original wound, the distant father, the elusive caretaker, the affection that had to be earned. Each new attraction feels unique, but beneath the surface lies the same question whispered by the soul. Will I finally be seen? The shadow of desire hides in that question. It is the belief that love must be won through suffering, that attention is proof of value, that to be chosen is to exist. Until this illusion is broken, every romance becomes the same story told with different names. The psyche disguises its wounds in the language of devotion. It calls dependency, loyalty, control, concern, and fear of abandonment care. In this way, the wound becomes sacred theater, an ancient play reenacted until the protagonist awakens to the truth that she was never a child anymore. When a woman loves from her wound, she does not seek partnership, she seeks restoration. The man becomes the simma, mirror through which she hopes to see her lost worth reflected back. His affection feels like sunlight, his withdrawal like death. She orbits him as the moon orbits the earth, sustained by borrowed light. Such love begins as salvation and ends as captivity. The more she gives, the less she feels alive. The more she tries to hold him, the more her identity dissolves. She becomes an echo of his moods, a shadow of his choices. In her desperation to keep him, she abandons herself. The unconscious allows this tragedy because it holds a hidden purpose, to make the shadow visible. What is unhealed must be made conscious, and the soul will use the stage of love to reveal what logic cannot. Every betrayal is a mirror of inner neglect. Every rejection is the repetition of a self once forsaken. The woman who sees this begins her descent into truth. At first, it feels like falling apart. Her illusions collapse. Her confidence crumbles. She no longer knows who she is without the struggle. Yet this disorientation is not destruction, it is purification. The descent has always been the way of transformation. Inanna, Queen of Heaven, was called to the underworld to meet her shadow sister. At each gate, she was stripped of her symbols, her crown, her jewels, her garments. By the time she reached the depths, she stood naked, face to face with herself. So too must every woman descend. Love demands it. The garments that once adorned her, the belief that she must please, that she must earn affection, that she must shrink to be safe, are taken away one by one. It feels like humiliation, but it is liberation in disguise. When she finally stands bare before her truth, she meets the shadow of desire itself, the part of her that has mistaken longing for love. This shadow is not evil. It is simply forgotten. It was born the day she first felt unseen and vowed to become what others wanted so she would never be left again. To meet this shadow is to hear her speak. I wanted only to be loved. I did not know I was already love itself. These words, when understood, break the spell of repetition. The woman realizes that the wound was never about the man, but about her own abandonment of herself. Painful relationships are not punishments, they are initiations. The soul does not torment for cruelty's sake. It arranges encounters that resurrect forgotten grief so that it may finally be healed. The man who wounds her simply holds the key to the locked room where her unlived self waits. But most flee from this meeting. They interpret the descent as failure and rush to rebuild illusion. They call the next attraction different, but it is only the same story with new scenery. The psyche repeats until it is recognized. What is not made conscious returns as fate. To break the pattern, she must endure the stillness that follows disillusionment. No new romance, no distraction, only silence. In that silence, the true work begins. For the first time, she feels the raw emptiness beneath desire, not as absence, but as space. The shadow of desire fears that space because it cannot control it. It whispers, "You will be alone forever." But the self, quiet and steady, answers, "You were never alone. You were simply divided." And in that moment, something shifts. The ache that once sought others turns inward toward the soul's own center. The woman learns to sit with her loneliness as one sits with fire, carefully, reverently. She discovers that beneath the heat of longing lies energy, power, creation. The same passion that burned her now begins to illuminate her. Slowly, she begins to see the purpose of her suffering. Each heartbreak was an invitation to remember her own worth. Each abandonment was a mirror reflecting the place she had abandoned herself. The pattern was not curse but compass, pointing her home. The more she accepts this truth, the less control the shadow holds. Desire, once compulsive, becomes conscious. It no longer demands to possess, it wishes to understand. The heart becomes an instrument of perception, not survival. At this stage, the woman no longer asks, "Does he love me?" but "What is this love revealing in me?" She shifts from reaction to reflection, from grasping to knowing. Love ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a mirror of awakening. When desire is purified by awareness, it changes nature. What was hunger becomes energy. What was obsession becomes devotion. She learns that the truest intimacy is not fusion, but presence, the ability to remain whole while being seen. In time, the very pattern that once enslaved her becomes her greatest wisdom. She recognizes it in others with compassion, not judgment. She sees the same wound in every face that has ever sought salvation in love, and she understands how sacred this suffering truly is. For without it, no one would ever seek consciousness. The gods use the language of longing to bring the soul to itself. They disguise their lessons in romance so that we may feel the fire of transformation willingly. This is why desire is not to be condemned. It is the doorway through which the unconscious becomes known. But it is a narrow door, one that only awareness can widen. Without awareness, desire devours. With it, desire reveals. The woman who has faced her shadow becomes luminous. Her heart no longer begs, it beholds. She does not chase love, she emanates it. Others feel her presence and mistake it for mystery, not knowing it is simply the peace of one who has descended and returned. She can love again, but differently. She no longer loses herself in another's storm. She remains the calm center. She no longer fears solitude, for solitude has become her teacher. The fire that once consumed her now warms those around her. Such a woman cannot be deceived by intensity or flattery. She sees through charm into character, through passion into purpose. Her love is not blind, it is visionary. She recognizes the divine spark in another without confusing it for her own. And though she may still feel longing, it is no longer painful. It is the quiet pull of the soul toward its next unfolding. Desire becomes service, love becomes light, and pain becomes history, transmuted into wisdom. So understand this: the shadow of desire is not your enemy, it is your forgotten guide. It leads you down the path of loss so that you may find the one thing that cannot be lost yourself. Every heartbreak was a teacher, every ache a message. When you grasp this, you no longer ask for rescue. You begin to bless the wound that once enslaved you, for it was through that wound that consciousness entered. Through that darkness, you learned to see. Through the shadow of desire, you discovered the light of the soul. There comes a point, after all, illusions have fallen, when love no longer appears as salvation but as fire, not the consuming blaze of passion that blinds the eyes, but the slow, sacred fire that purifies. Conscious love begins here, where projection ends and truth stands unclothed before the soul. To love consciously is to remain awake while standing in the flame. It is to feel the old patterns stirring, the desire to merge, the fear of loss and yet not obey them. It is to love without intoxication, to see another's humanity without diminishing the mystery that drew you there. When two beings meet in this way, the atmosphere changes. It is quieter, less theatrical, more alive. There is still tenderness, but it breathes differently, steadier, truer, unforced. The soul recognizes this not as the frenzy of falling, but as the stillness of arrival. For conscious love is not conquest or fusion, it is participation in a shared becoming. The woman who has faced her shadow no longer enters love as supplicant or savior. She enters as equal, one who can stand before the beloved without disguise. Her vulnerability is no longer weakness, but invitation. The old ways of love begin to die here. The games of pursuit and retreat lose their charm. Drama feels foreign. The heart, once addicted to extremes, now longs for equilibrium. It has discovered that peace, not chaos, is the true sign of depth. But peace requires courage. To love consciously is to remain in the open field between two souls without the armor of illusion. It is to allow another to see your contradictions and to see theirs without recoiling. This is not romance, it is revelation. The ego resists this exposure. It prefers idealization, the safety of roles, the rescuer, the nurturer, the strong one, the adored one. Conscious love demands their dissolution. It says, "Come without masks, bring the parts you hide, and I will meet you there." This meeting is what the alchemists called the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. Fire and water, light and shadow, man and woman. It is not achieved by merging, but by tension held in awareness. When the opposites can coexist without annihilation, something new is born. At first, this tension feels unbearable. Each partner becomes mirror and catalyst, reflecting not only love, but also limitation. The more conscious the bond, the more precisely it reveals what still sleeps within. Arguments no longer signify incompatibility, they signify growth demanding recognition. In ordinary love, conflict destroys. In conscious love, it transforms. When anger surfaces, it is seen as energy asking to be integrated, not weaponized. When fear arises, it is met with curiosity instead of blame. Every friction becomes the grinding stone that polishes the soul's clarity. To sustain this kind of union requires both presence and humility. One must recognize that the beloved is not an extension of oneself, but a separate universe. To love them truly is to allow their difference to remain intact. To control or correct is to extinguish the sacred fire. Conscious love honors mystery. It understands that no matter how intimate two souls become, they will always remain partially veiled. The distance between them is not emptiness. It is the space where God breathes. Love that cannot bear distance soon decays into possession. And yet, even in this maturity, temptation lingers. The mind longs to revert to certainty, to retreat into fantasy. But love, once conscious, can never again be reduced to comfort. It is an instrument of the self, and its task is to refine, to awaken, to deepen. This refinement takes many forms. Sometimes it appears as devotion, sometimes as solitude, sometimes as loss. Each phase burns away another layer of attachment until only essence remains. The more one resists the fire, the longer the purification endures. The woman who has entered this stage feels its intensity. She senses that love now asks for more than emotion. It asks for awareness. Her task is no longer to be desired, but to remain present even when desire fades. She becomes the vessel that can contain both joy and pain without breaking. Her lover, too, must awaken. The masculine must cease to fear her depth, for when the feminine becomes conscious, she ceases to be an object of admiration and becomes mirror of truth. Many men retreat before such reflection. Few endure it. Yet those who do emerge transformed. In this way, love becomes a shared alchemy. The two stand within the same furnace, each mirroring the other's unconscious material. They endure the heat, not to destroy one another, but to reveal the gold hidden beneath the dross. The relationship itself becomes the crucible of transformation. When love reaches this temperature, it burns away pretense. Words lose importance, energy speaks instead. The lovers sense each other's moods without explanation. They begin to feel as though they are being moved by something larger than their own wills, a force that is both within and beyond them. This is Eros in its divine form, the archetype of union that is not about pleasure but purpose. It demands surrender, not submission. The ego kneels not before another person, but before the mystery of being itself. This is why conscious love feels sacred. It humbles even as it exalts. The alchemists describe this as the marriage of Sol and Luna, sun and moon. The masculine offers clarity, direction, and presence. The feminine offers depth, intuition, and soul. When they unite, a third thing appears, the child of the union, symbol of consciousness newly born. This third thing may manifest as creation, insight, art, or peace. It is the evidence that the relationship has transcended personal desire. It serves not the lovers alone, but life itself. The self has used their union as instrument for its own unfolding. But make no mistake, this love does not spare you from pain. It demands integrity at every step. It reveals where you are false, where you still cling to control, where you fear loss more than you honor truth. Each encounter with the beloved becomes a lesson in surrender. Yet this surrender is not defeat, it is freedom. You no longer strive to be perfect, to please, or to possess. You begin to love as the river loves the stones it shapes, by constant movement, by presence that does not ask to be reciprocated. In conscious love, forgiveness is not an act, but a state of being. You forgive not because you have been wronged, but because you understand that both of you are learning through imperfection. Love no longer keeps accounts. The woman who loves from this place radiates stillness. She is both flame and hearth. She no longer fears being misunderstood, for she has ceased to seek validation. Her love is her understanding. She does not offer it to change the beloved, but to illuminate what is already divine within him. Even when love must end, it does not destroy her. She has learned that endings too belong to the sacred order. The fire that once united may consume the form, but not the essence. True love cannot die, for it was never bound by time, it belongs to eternity. To remain conscious in love is to accept impermanence without despair. It is to know that every bond, however brief, serves the unfolding of the self. The beloved is not possession, but passage, a mirror through which one phase of soul life reflects into another. And so the woman who has walked through the fire emerges tempered, not hardened. Her love becomes less like a flame and more like light, steady, unthreatening, illuminating without burning. Those who meet her sense peace, not urgency, depth, not demand. This love is not romantic in the common sense. It is devotional. It does not seek fulfillment. It is fulfillment. It recognizes divinity in the other and bows before it, not as worshiper, but as equal participant in the great work of consciousness. The alchemists called this work the opus magnum, the great work of transformation. They knew that the union of opposites was the highest expression of divine law. In love, this law is lived rather than studied. Every embrace becomes sacrament, every silence, prayer. At last, the woman understands that love's purpose was never to make her happy, but to make her whole. Happiness is fleeting, wholeness endures. Through love, she has met her shadow, her strength, her courage, her capacity to forgive, and her ability to let go. This is the final purification: to love without grasping, to hold without fear, to give without loss. The fire has done its work. What remains is gold, simple, incorruptible, radiant. The woman who has known this fire becomes both student and teacher of the divine mystery called love. Her relationships henceforth will carry the mark of this refinement. They will not revolve around possession, but around presence. Her gaze will no longer seek confirmation. It will offer recognition. The men who meet her will feel it instantly that she does not need them, yet sees them fully. For this is the paradox of conscious love. The less you need the beloved, the deeper you can love. Freedom, once feared as abandonment, becomes the ground of union. In that freedom, love breathes eternally. And so the fire burns on not to destroy, but to sanctify. Every relationship that follows will enter its warmth, and every soul that approaches will leave transformed. For conscious love, once awakened, becomes a force in the world, a living flame passed from heart to heart. When the fire subsides and the smoke clears, something quiet remains. Not the ashes of what was lost, but the clarity of what has been found. The woman who has passed through love's purification stands differently now, less in search, more in knowing. She has seen that the purpose of every passion was never possession, but revelation. What love unveils, when it has done its work, is not the perfection of another, but the completeness of the soul itself. The great illusion of romance, the belief that one must find a missing half, dissolves. The circle was never broken, only the mind believed it so. Love was not the path to wholeness, it was the mirror that revealed it was already there. Every loss, every separation, every loneliness that once felt unbearable now appears in different light. They were not punishments, they were initiations. The divine plan of the psyche always unfolds through contrast. You had to lose what you idolized to remember what you are. In this realization, the heart no longer clings. It no longer fears endings because it understands their hidden continuity. To love consciously is to live with open hands, to let what comes arrive freely and what must go depart with blessing. Only what is owned fears loss, what is loved in truth can never be taken. When the inner masculine and feminine have reconciled, the woman no longer projects her sovereignty onto the outer man. She no longer sees him as authority or savior. She has integrated the voice that once ruled her from within. Her thoughts, once guided by his imagined judgment, now arise from her own depths. The animus, once tyrant, has become companion. He no longer dictates her worth, he guards her vision. Together they form the sacred marriage, the conjunctio, the inner union of opposites. Out of their harmony arises peace, the rare stillness that comes when nothing in the soul fights against itself. Such a woman does not seek to be chosen anymore, she chooses. She does not plead for recognition, she recognizes. Her solitude no longer echoes with lack, it resounds with presence. She belongs to herself, and because of that, she can belong to another without bondage. When she meets love again, it will feel different, quieter, humbler, more radiant. It will not intoxicate her. It will steady her. The man who approaches her will sense that he stands before someone who has passed through the night of her own soul and returned with light in her eyes. He will see that her love no longer promises rescue or redemption. It offers reflection. It says, "I will not complete you, but I will meet you." Such love requires maturity, for it is not built on fusion but on resonance, two whole beings standing in the same light, neither eclipsing nor diminishing the other. To the world, this may appear uneventful. There are no fireworks, no feverish beginnings, no melodrama of separation. Yet, beneath the calm surface, the current runs deep. What joins them is not desire alone, but understanding, not dependency, but reverence. This is the state the mystics called divine companionship. It is not limited to romance. It can be shared between friends, between teacher and student, between soul and life itself. Love becomes less about the person and more about the presence that flows through them. The woman begins to see love everywhere, in the curve of a leaf, in a child's laughter, in the silence after prayer. The edge to fade. Boundaries between human and divine affection blur. Every act of tenderness becomes worship, every moment of awareness a vow renewed. This is the true transformation that the unconscious seeks, not the acquisition of another, but the awakening of eros as a principle of life. Once awakened, this force no longer confines itself to relationship. It infuses existence itself with meaning. But the journey is never static. Wholeness is not a fixed state. It is a rhythm. The psyche continues its dance of union and separation, contraction and expansion. Even the awakened heart will be tested again, not to punish, but to deepen. Each new experience becomes another spiral in the soul's unfolding. The difference now is consciousness. The woman no longer resists the cycles. She understands that life itself is a series of marriages and deaths, each dissolving into the next. To love is to consent to change. To stay awake through it is to participate in eternity. When sorrow returns, she no longer curses it. She sits beside it as an old friend and listens. When joy comes, she does not grasp it. She lets it sing through her. This balance is the mark of the soul that has matured through love's long education. The gods no longer need to send her unavailable men or lovers who awaken her wounds. The message has been received, the lesson fulfilled. Now, what comes to her are mirrors of her wholeness, not of her hunger. The world changes shape when the inner world is reconciled. Wholeness is not absence of pain. It is the absence of resistance to pain. It is the willingness to live in alignment with what is, without bargaining for comfort. The soul that has integrated love and loss becomes unbreakable, for it knows that everything it touches serves its growth. In this state, the woman's love becomes transpersonal. It no longer concerns only the personal beloved, but extends toward all life. She becomes vessel for a greater eros, the divine energy that sustains creation. Her tenderness nourishes, her words restore, her mere presence brings coherence. Those who meet her may not understand what moves them, only that they feel more real in her company. She has become what Jung called a symbol of the self, an image through which others glimpse their own potential for wholeness. Her life becomes a quiet teaching, no sermons, only presence. Yet even here, humility is necessary. To believe herself source rather than vessel would be to lose the very grace she embodies. She remembers that the light does not belong to her, it passes through her. She serves it by staying transparent. This transparency is her final initiation. It is the state of being through which love ceases to have opposite. There is no longer rejection or possession, beginning or end, only the eternal exchange between giving and receiving. In that balance, the woman becomes what she once sought, home itself. And so she stands no longer waiting, no longer chasing, no longer fearing time. The men who once seemed divine and distant are understood now as symbols of her own evolution. The ones who could not stay have fulfilled their purpose. The one who will stay, if he comes, will find her already complete. But even if he does not come, she is not deprived. Her solitude has turned to serenity. Her aloneness is full. She has learned the final secret of love, that what we call union with another is merely the outward expression of an inner reconciliation that was waiting all along. The journey that began as a fall ends as an ascent. What fell was the ego. What rose was the soul. The woman who once sought completion in another now walks the world as completeness itself. Love has done its work. When she loves again, and she will, it will not be from emptiness but from overflow. Her heart will not beg, it will bless. Her presence will not demand, it will inspire. Those who come near her will sense that her love does not burn to possess, but shines to reveal. For that is the mark of true wholeness. It gives light without condition, warmth without judgment, faith without fear. It is not concerned with who stays or leaves, for it has already found the beloved within. The outer world merely mirrors the radiance of that inner union. In the end, every woman's path through love leads back to this discovery that what she called falling was only descent into herself, and what she called being chosen was the self-awakening to its own divinity. She looks back on every man, every heartbreak, every silence, and whispers, "Thank you." For without them, she could not have met the one who was always waiting, the eternal companion within, the God image that had disguised itself as longing. And now, when she gives her heart, it is not to be completed but to create. Her love no longer binds, it liberates. No longer wounds, it heals. No longer seeks eternity, it is eternity, living through her, quiet and unending. This is the final mystery, that love, once purified of need, becomes indistinguishable from consciousness itself. It is no longer something one does, it is what one is.